Hello, my friend. Welcome to this episode. We are talking about back to school. While I have my second going off to kindergarten, my first going off to second grade, I am still very much in the newbie realm of back to school things and need to know with kids. But I was so lost and confused and what do I do here type of situation when my first went to school. So a podcast like this would have helped me out a lot. And that's what I hope it helps you with today. If you've got a kid starting school or if you are just wondering about efficiency things with your kids, I'm going to have some really great tips on that of things that have worked really well for us. But like I said, I'm new here still with the kids in school situation as mine are still in early elementary age. But if you have any hacks that you want to share with other moms, send me a DM on Instagram and I'll share some of those in another upcoming episode. And I'll give the credit where credit is due because I think it'd be really helpful to hear from other ladies, not just me, that have navigated this. But let's dive in to this episode. Welcome to Living in Sync. This is a wellness and lifestyle podcast for ladies in their 30s. We've got a lot going on, and on this show, we're going to talk about it all. I'm your host, Joelle. If you're into health, wellness, fitness, beauty, fashion, business, career, time management hacks, organization, girl chats, goal setting, mom things, and everything in between, I hope this show supports you in whatever you need today. Let's dig into today's episode. Back to school. I know some of my friends already have kids back to school, and this will still be helpful in helping get into the rigmarole of all things back to school. But like I said at the top of the episode, I know I'm still new to the party on this because I've just got little kids and I just hope this is helpful to others. So the first thing is, just in case, and this is kind of happening, I'm going to try to get this episode out earlier than what I have in the rotation, because a couple of the hacks that I have, the main hack that I have is ordering school supply online, especially when it comes to the primary color markers and so yellow number 2 pencils and a black folder or whatever it is, where it's the specific things. Because I've gone to the store the first year my son went to kindergarten. I went to the store and I was like, I'm just gonna go pick them all out at one time. And they're Walmart was out of some things, went to Target, they were out of some things, had to go to a random Walgreens. And if that's your jam, store hopping like that, because I know for some moms they love that, but for me I was like, this is annoying, this is frustrating. And so what I did is, in my son's first grade year, towards the end of July, I put in a back to school order where I just ordered online and had everything delivered to my house, which was so nice. And this year, actually, our school sent out a link, and it's a company called School Toolbox. And I know our school registered the supplies in there, and I told my best friend about it, and she said her school wasn't on the list. And I don't know how you would even ask your school to make this available and accessible to them. But all I had to do was literally go to this link, select the grade and gender of my child, and I got a box for each boy, and all of their school supplies are in there. And I got it before July, and it was amazing. And I thought, as I was kind of looking at the supplies and then what they were charging, maybe they cost it a little bit, but I really do not think that it was that big of an upcharge. So that has been my main hack, is order the school supplies online, especially if you have kids that are obviously they see something and they want it, and then you're but your teacher said you have to get the yellow pencils, or you can't get the 64 box of crayons, it says get the 24 or whatever it is. There's just the like specifics on there. For me, I'm going to take the kids to get their shoes and their backpacks. We don't do a brand new backpack every year. I've been trying to do like every other year, is get a good backpack and try to have it last for 2 years. I know as the kids get older and their books get heavier, for us, I just want to make sure that their backpack is large enough to put snow pants in. So if you live in the Midwest, that's another hack. Is I know your child is going to want like the character backpack, but keep in mind that sometimes they will have to shove they don't usually put their boots in their backpacks, but it would be nice if you kept in mind, like if they needed to shove their snow pants, their winter gear, their boots into their backpack, that it would be big enough for that. And I know it's like the cutest thing, seeing a little tiny kindergartner's body with a big old backpack on it. I'm sure in maybe warmer climates, you probably don't need that big of a backpack, but like it was really helpful, especially in the winter months, instead of being like, oh, I have to shove all this gear in there, and then they keep an extra, in kindergarten at least, it's suggested to bring an extra pair of clothes. And when they put their shoes in their backpack, it's nice to get one that has like the 2 pockets. So I had told like my firstborn, put your shoes in this front pocket and put your folder in this back pocket. And it was a good quality backpack, so it got him through both kindergarten and first grade. So that's what our plan is to do. I mean, take it or leave it based off of where you live, or if your child is going to get excited over a character backpack because they just don't want to go to school, but you're like, you'll get an Elsa backpack, then do that. Like solidarity to just doing the thing that'll help them do the thing, like same. And so when it comes to supplies, I just make it really easy for me and do an online order. And then we go do a fun little shopping one-on-one date for their other things, like their shoes and their backpacks. And that's something that I saw a couple of my other local friends doing with their kids that I thought was really special. Like they make it a date with their child one-on-one to go shopping, get the shoes, get the backpack, go out to lunch, do something fun together, just the one-on-one time. Because like shopping for my boys, at least, they're starting to really like it. And I think it's just a cool one-on-one thing to do. And it's something special that I did with my mom every year, especially if you're a girl mom, like getting the outfits and all of that fun stuff, like be really, really cool. Another hack that I have, and I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday, was asking the teacher their preferred communication. Because so far, one of our kids' teachers wanted us to communicate via this app that the school had, and others are like, just send me an email, or, call the office for this, that, and the other thing. So if you are going to kindergarten, I think if you have a child going to their first year of school, I think a couple great questions to ask their teacher specifically is the what do I do when question. So what do I do when they're out sick? Because I think each school is different in the sense of they want you to tell the office or they want you to tell the teacher. What do I do if, and this was something I learned when my son was in kindergarten, because my husband and I were going on a trip, and I was like, how do I let you guys know that we're going to be out of the country and this person is in charge of my child while they're gone? And if they need a backup person, like then there'll be that person. And I actually had to submit a form, or like had to have something written out to the school. So I would just think about a couple of those what if questions. I mean, I was even asking the silly questions of like, what if school is canceled because of a snowstorm? And they had said like, you'll get a text message. And so I just knew like I didn't have to sit up waiting and watching the news like we used to do back in the day. I could just get a text message. And I know that sounds so silly now, But when you don't know what you don't know, and it was actually funny, I told one of my girlfriends that I leaned on heavily for these types of questions. I'm like, you should really write a handbook and sell it for like $5, and I bet you would make a killing at the kindergarten roundup. Because now I have a girlfriend who her first is going into kindergarten, and she's asking me these questions, and I'm like, I think I have the answer for you. And so that's just really, really helpful. And asking the teacher preferred communication, or if you have any situations where it's like, if another, like typically my kid, so here's another example. Typically my son will ride the bus, but if I need to come pick him up, who should I let know? Should I call the office first, or should I send you an email first? Right? So I had a couple little what if scenarios on deck that I just wanted to ask, like, in this type of a situation, what's the preferred mode of communication? Okay. So those were just a few little tiny hacks that I wanted to start with at the top of the episode. And just know and communicate to yourself and your kiddo, like, it's okay if you drop the ball on something. It's okay if you are not in the most, like, you're not in the most routine thing when it comes to being in the know right away, because you don't know what you don't know, and there's a lot going on, and there can be a handful of different pieces. But the things that really help us is the 3 R's, is routine, rhythm, and responsibility. So we have certain routines that we go through for backpack situation, getting ready for the bus, and like preparing for the day. Yeah, but mostly for when it comes to the context of school, we've got the routines down for getting ready for school in the morning and the backpack situation. When it comes to rhythms and how I think rhythms are different than routines, is they're similar but different. But in a rhythm, it's really what makes one thing happen, makes the next thing happen, makes the next thing happen. So a routine might be like, okay, let's make sure we do a backpack check. Do you have everything that you need in your backpack? Is your backpack ready to go? Oh, water bottle's missing. Let's go get the water bottle. A rhythm is really just like how the day starts is typically the same. So I have early birds. And I mean, I'm probably going to be eating my words here in a year or two, but I never have I ever had to wake my kids up in the morning for anything other than when my husband and I need to be somewhere. They tend to sleep in that morning. But there's a rhythm in the morning. They know they wake up. My kids watch TV right when they wake up. I know some people aren't for that, but we have a little bit of screen time. And then when I have breakfast done, TV gets turned off. After breakfast, it's get dressed and ready. And then we wait for the time to get our backpacks ready, and then they're off to the bus. So to me, that's a rhythm. Every morning has that type of rhythm. It's always the watch a little TV, turn the TV off, have breakfast, and then do the rigmarole of the routines, which is, okay, dressed, backpacks, out the door. And because they go onto the bus, I've taught them when the clock says this time, we go out to the bus, and make sure that they kind of understand and recognize that. And that was a big thing. I used to let the TV be on in the background through everything, and that was awful. That was totally awful, because they would get distracted by it mid, like, filling up a water bottle, and I'm like, focus, focus, focus. I'm like, why don't you just turn the TV off, because then the focus will be there on the task. So the rhythm of the morning is the same, and the rhythm of after school is the same. And then leads to the 3rd R, which is responsibility. So I was at a leadership conference one time listening to the amazing John C. Maxwell talk about building leaders, and this was a business conference, so he was talking about building other leaders within your business. But this has stuck with me, where it's like, at first it's I do, you watch. The next phase is we do together and complete it together. The next phase is you do, I watch. The next phase, I think, for in this context of kids, it's you do, I check, and then the last phase is when you can just really trust them to do it themselves. At this point with my second grader, I'm still at the he does it, and I check. Most times. By the end of the year in first grade, I wasn't checking. I was like, I wanted to have a little bit of responsibility going on, in the sense of like, oh, you forgot that? Well, then that's on you type of thing. But with my kindergartner, it'll very much be we do together, especially in the beginning of the year. And then I'll move to you do, I watch. And having your kids do this is so much easier than doing it all for them. And in the beginning, yes, it is you making sure, it really was making sure I was ready to go and I was fully engaged in. And another hack, I didn't write this down, but I'm glad it came to my mind now, is I have a chalkboard in our entryway. So it's where we're getting on our shoes, where they're grabbing their coats. And at the beginning of the school year and at the beginning of the summer, I make a little checklist of the things that they need to have with them. So during the school year, it's folder, water bottle, sweatshirt. In the wintertime, I'm going to add the winter items on there. And so my kids can both read. I know, like, when you get there, but your kids both will eventually read. They can read through that list, and do you have all of those things? With my kindergartner, it'll still be very, very much me being like, we got that, check, we got that, check. My second grader, he's going to be able to do all of that on his own. And so responsibility, actually, that is one thing I know they have learned a lot, and not even intentionally learned a lot about, but learned through like the consequence type of situation that's just in the day program that they've been at this summer, is they've had to learn responsibility. They don't keep track of their water bottle. They don't keep track of their things. It gets put in the lost and found, and they can go find it in the lost and found. And if it's not in the lost and found, well, then you've got to keep better track of it. And man, has that been nice that lesson has been learned, with not me being a parent and being like, pick up your things all the time. Like, they're really just kind of getting it. And even so, my sweet little 6-year-old has said, we should have a lost and found at home, Mom. It's like, that'd be a great idea. Like, everything of yours would be put in the lost and found bin. But those three things is establishing rhythms. So I think getting a rhythm before a routine is helpful. But I mean, my kids know that at this certain time in the morning, TV's off and it's breakfast time. And then after breakfast, they go get dressed. After they get dressed, then we do this, right? And then they can fill free time however they want. If there's any sort of buffer time in there, but usually there's not. Usually it's kind of going from thing to thing to thing. And then the last thing I want to talk about that I necessarily wasn't prepared for, and I still don't respond to in the best way, is preparing for those hard conversations that are age appropriate, obviously. Kind of think about or listen to some podcasts on what your child's age typically tends to see in the years that they are. I know for one of my kids, it's, and just in general with school and in general in life, the bullying situation happens. The friends having conversation about other people towards their backs. And I mean, I think they're different but similar to boys and girls. But we have, and I think this is just my innate nature, is to, when we need to talk about this, this is how I'd like to handle it. And if you have a partner that you want to have those conversations with, I think that's really great, because when we had the conversation about bullying and being picked on, my experience and my husband's experience were similar but different. My thoughts were similar but different with my husband, but we could come together and connect on like, this is the lesson and this is the value and this is the approach that we will take when and if that bridge gets, we have to cross that bridge. One thing about me thus far in motherhood is I handle hard conversations well. There's just something in me that clicks on when a hard conversation has to happen, where I become sound and I become clear and I become transparent. Whereas sometimes in the minutia of things, I'm like frazzle dazzle and like, and make small things into big situations. But man, and so I know that's one of my strengths. So that will often be the initiated by me, and I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. And I think getting ahead of it is going to be helpful. So then you're not blindsided, or your kids aren't finding things out from other kids at school. And I'll just be honest and transparent about an example that happened about this. So my son rides the bus, and last year he came home after the Kansas City Chiefs parade situation that happened. I don't want to say what happened in case you do have kids in the car around you, but my son came home and he was misinterpreting, and maybe like I also know my son's brain, and like I was able to say, okay, can I talk to you about this and tell you what happened, what is truth, and what we need to know about this. And I mean, we're even going into an election year, so when it comes to politics, like, is that something you want your kids to be conversing with the kids about, other kids about? And do they need to be? No, they don't. But if a teacher brings it up, if other students bring it up, like just really kind of getting the gauge on, those hard conversations that come with like the age around of which they're at. Because I really think if they feel like you are open to having the hard conversations long term, that will lead to them coming to you with hard conversations and knowing that you will be sound and give truth. And I have been trying to do my best in that and with that. And also it takes sometimes it takes you to a place where you're like, oh, I didn't realize like that type of thing still impacts me to this day. So preparing for those hard conversations is another just little tidbit that I would share with a friend that has a child going off to school this year. And when it comes to those early years, they're not as big or whatnot, but like I remember when my son came home and he talked about their fire drill that they had at school or their shooter drill that they had at school, and because I knew those things were coming, I was able to say like, oh yeah, and in that situation you want to make sure to, I heard him and talk about first, and I'm like, yep. And we were just very much able to come to a really sound, safe place in communicating about it. And I know as the bigger grades happen, there are more tough conversations to be had. But I think one of the blessings that I have with my parents is we've had hard conversations, and we still communicate about everything and anything, even if they are hard conversations. And I think that stems from when I was a kid and when I was a teen, there were hard topics that my parents had to talk to me about because of things that came up in our lives. And I appreciate my parents being transparent with me about those things and talking to me about them. And now, yes, as an adult, I'm not afraid to have deep, meaningful conversations about things with specifically like my mom, but that's just because I'm much closer to my mom when it comes to like talking on the phone and going shopping and stuff like that. But I could definitely have hard conversations with either of my parents. And that's because when we were going through things growing up, we talked about them. And sometimes maybe we were over communicators on things where it's like, as a kid, maybe I didn't need to know about certain things, but also it's like, I'm just grateful that we were able to have open communication. So I will leave that there and share with me which one was really impactful to you. Don't forget, if you're a mom and you're like, okay, honey, you need to know this about kids going back to school and all of the things. If you're a teacher, this was another hack that I forgot. I know I was just rapping, but this was totally another thing when it came to the responsibility bucket is I heard that feedback from teachers about kids doing independent tasks, like making sure they can put on their own shoes and open their own little snack bags, or understanding like putting away their own items and keeping their own items in their certain spaces and places, and that being really helpful for kids. And I know there's still a couple things that we have to work on with my 6-year-old to prepare him a little bit better for that type of situation in kindergarten, but that went in with the responsibility bucket. Sorry, I was kind of closing out the episode and jumped back to that, but I wanted to mention it. And so if anything that you're like, oh, lady, you need to know this, come to my Instagram and share with me. I would love to do a part 2 of this with wisdom from you guys. So let me know, or come on over to Patreon, because in there you can leave comments under our episodes, and we would love to just like have a collaborative community, because each school is so different, each grade is so different, and so it's just so nice to have other moms that are like, yeah, we've navigated that type of thing too, and this is what has been helpful. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any recommendations or want certain topics covered on the show, I would love if you left them in the Apple ratings and review. That would be just a really cool space to not only hear your feedback about the episodes, but also the episodes that you love the most, because I love to make episodes that are in alignment to serve you in this season of your life. So I'll talk to you next time. Bye, friend. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you loved what you heard, or you want to share your favorite episode topics, please leave a rating and review. This helps the podcast growth and gives people an idea of what the podcast is all about. Something new and exciting that I wanted to share with you before we go is that we now have a Patreon page. This has replaced the Feminine Edge collective community in a cohesive place that is easier for me to manage and cheaper for you. If you are interested in our monthly classes, exclusive day in the life vlogs, Bible studies, community Q&A, and more, go to patreon.com/livingInSync and join for just $5 a month. Check out the show notes for any links or details of things referenced in today's episode, and I look forward to chatting with you in the next one.